The rhythmic clanking of machinery echoed through the deep tunnels of the abandoned German mine. Dust swirled under the dim, flickering light of headlamps as a team of miners worked tirelessly, chipping away at the rock face. The mine had been closed for decades, deemed unprofitable and unsafe, yet a new excavation project had brought life back into its hollow corridors. Johann Fischer, a veteran miner with over 20 years of experience, wiped the sweat from his brow and signaled for a break. "This rock is tougher than anything I've ever seen," he muttered, glancing at his colleagues. "Maybe we hit some kind of old foundation?" One of the younger miners, Lucas, suggested. "Doubt it," Johann replied. "We're too deep for that. Nothing should be down here." But something was. A sudden jolt ran through the drill as if it had struck solid metal. Sparks flew, and the machine groaned under the pressure. Then, an eerie silence followed. The miners exchanged nervous glances before Johann cautiously stepped forward, brushing away loose debris with gloved hands. His fingers met a surface unlike anything he had expected, cold, metallic, and impossibly smooth. Lucas leaned in, his headlamp casting a weak glow over the uncovered surface. "Is that ... a door?" he whispered, his voice laced with disbelief. As more dust was wiped away, the miners revealed an enormous metallic slab embedded within the rock. Strange engravings, symbols unfamiliar to any of them, lined its surface. They were intricate, ancient-looking, yet unnervingly precise. Then, Johann's gaze locked onto something chilling, an emblem unmistakable in its sinister history. An Ahnenerbe ... double quotes he exhaled, barely above a whisper. The name alone sent a shiver down his spine. A wave of unease settled over the group. Ahnenerbe, the Nazi organization that had delved into the occult, the supernatural, and lost ancient technologies. What was their mark doing on a door buried 400 meters underground? Lucas took a step back. "This isn't right, Johann. We should report it. And say what? That we found a Nazi relic sealed beneath millions of years of rock. No one's going to believe us." Before they could decide on their next move, the mine's comms crackled to life. The foreman's voice was sharp and urgent. "All excavation teams, report back immediately. The site is now under lockdown. Do not touch anything. Repeat, do not proceed further." The message only deepened their sense of dread. Something about this discovery had triggered immediate action from higher-ups. Johann turned back to the door. "Whatever's behind this ... they already know about it. And they don't want us anywhere near it." The metallic surface seemed to hum under his touch, almost as if it were alive. None of them could shake the growing feeling that they had just unearthed something that was never meant to be found. The next morning, the mine was eerily quiet. The usual chatter among the workers was replaced by hushed whispers and cautious glances. No one knew what to make of the metallic door buried deep within the earth. Some were convinced it was a modern installation, some long-forgotten military experiment. Others, however, couldn't ignore the impossible reality. How could a structure so advanced be embedded in rock over 300 million years old? Johann, one of the senior miners, felt an unease he couldn't shake. He had been working in mines for over 2 decades, but never had he encountered something so unnatural. The previous night, he had barely slept, haunted by the sight of the strange symbols carved into the door. They didn't resemble any known language, yet they felt oddly familiar, as if they carried an ancient significance. During their morning briefing, the site manager, Muller, walked in with a stern expression. Behind him stood 2 men in suits, government officials, or at least, that was the assumption. "Effective immediately, all operations in this sector are halted," Muller announced in a cold, measured voice. "No one is to speak about what was found yesterday. Violators will face immediate termination both from their jobs and from any future employment in the industry." A wave of tension swept through the room. This was no ordinary shutdown. The fear in Muller's eyes told them that even he was unsure of what forces they had uncovered. That afternoon, a convoy of black vehicles arrived at the site. Unmarked trucks and armed personnel moved with precision, sealing off the entrance to the mine. The workers were told to leave, no questions asked. Those who hesitated were met with cold stares from men who clearly weren't there to negotiate. As Johann and his colleagues gathered their things, one of the younger miners, Lucas, pulled him aside. His face was pale, his hand shaking. "Johann, I took a picture," Lucas whispered, pulling out his phone. He hesitated before turning the screen toward him. The image displayed the strange door, its metallic surface gleaming under the dim light of their mining lamps. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Carved into the metal, just beneath the ancient symbols, was something unmistakably modern, a symbol linked to the notorious Ahnenerbe, the Nazi organization dedicated to uncovering lost knowledge, occult practices, and forbidden technologies. Johann felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just an ancient artifact. This was something that had been placed there deliberately by those who should have never known of its existence, and now someone was making sure it remained buried forever. Johann and Lukas barely spoke on the ride home. The tension was suffocating. The image of the strange door burned in Johann's mind, but it was the Ahnenerbe insignia that truly disturbed him. The Nazi organization had been obsessed with ancient civilizations, lost technologies, and the occult. But how could they have known about something buried for hundreds of millions of years? That night, Lukas sent the picture to Johann with a simple message: "We need to find out what this is." Johann hesitated. Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, but his curiosity was stronger. He started searching through online archives, reading about Ahnenerbe's secret projects. Stories of lost expeditions, strange artifacts, and unexplained disappearances filled his screen. The deeper he dug, the more uneasy he became. Then he found something that made his blood run cold. A declassified document from the 1940s mentioned an operation called Projector, a project door. The files were vague, but they referenced an underground structure discovered in an unknown location, predating all human civilization. The Nazis had been obsessed with it, believing it was a gateway to something beyond human comprehension. The project was suddenly abandoned, and all records were sealed. Johann's hands trembled. Could it be possible that the door they found was the same one mentioned in the documents? Before he could think further, his phone buzzed. Another message. From Lukas: "They're watching me." Johann's stomach tightened. He quickly typed back, "Who?" A few minutes passed. No response. Then, another message: "I saw a black car outside my house." Same ones from the mine. Johann's pulse pounded. This wasn't paranoia. Lukas had done the one thing they were warned not to do. He had shared evidence of the discovery. A knock on Johann's door nearly made him jump out of his chair. His breath caught in his throat as he slowly approached. Was it Lukas, or was it someone else? Taking a deep breath, he opened the door. A man in a dark suit stood before him. His expression was unreadable, his eyes cold. "Mr. Wagner," the man said, his voice calm yet firm. "We need to talk." Johann felt his heart hammering in his chest. He had just stepped into something far bigger than he ever imagined. And now, there was no way back. Johann's grip on the door tightened. The man standing before him exuded an unsettling presence, too calm, too calculated. Behind him, a black car idled on the street, its tinted windows concealing whoever might be inside. "May I come in?" the man asked. Though it was clear Johann had little choice, without a word, he stepped aside. The stranger entered, scanning the room with practiced precision before turning his attention back to Johann. "You've been asking questions," the man said. His voice was devoid of any warmth. "Digging in places you shouldn't." Johann forced himself to remain composed. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man's lips curled into a faint, almost amused smile. "Come now, Mr. Wagner. You and your friend took something from that mine, didn't you?" Johann's stomach twisted. Did they know about the photo, about Lukas? "I don't have anything," he lied. The man studied him for a long moment, as if deciding whether to press further. Then, reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small black envelope and placed it on the table. "You've been given an opportunity," the man said, "to walk away, to forget everything you saw." He took a step closer, his gaze sharp as a blade. "And you will forget." Johann's jaw clenched. "And if I don't?" the man sighed, as if disappointed. "Then you won't have to worry about remembering anything ever again." The weight of the threat settled over the room like a thick fog. Johann swallowed hard. "Who are you?" he finally asked. The man didn't answer. Instead, he tapped the envelope once. "Open it. Then make the right decision." With that, he turned and walked to the door. Johann hesitated. "What about Lukas?" The man paused. "Your friend made his choice. You should be smarter than him." Then he was gone. Johann stood frozen for a moment before forcing himself to move. He grabbed the envelope and tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. His breath caught in his Throat. It was Luca's, or rather, it had been Luca's. The image showed him sitting in a dimly lit room. Fear evident in his eyes, his hands were bound, his mouth gagged. But what terrified Johann the most was the timestamp in the corner. The photo had been taken less than an hour ago. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Your last warning. Stay silent, or you'll be next. Johann's hands trembled. He had no doubt that the people behind this were serious. But one thing was clear, he couldn't just walk away. Luca's was still alive, and Johann was going to find him. Johann's pulse pounded as he gripped his phone, staring at the chilling message. Luca's was alive, but for how long? He had two choices: obey and forget everything, or risk his life to uncover the truth. For him, there was no choice at all. He stuffed the photograph into his pocket, grabbed his jacket, and left his apartment. He had one lead: the mine. If Luca's had been taken, that's where it all started. He drove through the winding mountain roads toward the now sealed mine entrance. Paranoia clawed at him. Every car in his rearview mirror seemed suspicious. Every shadow outside his headlights could be someone watching. Finally, he arrived. The once busy site was now an abandoned husk, surrounded by rusted fences and warning signs. But Johann knew. Places like this secrecy didn't mean emptiness. He parked a distance away, grabbed a flashlight, and made his way toward the perimeter. A hole in the fencing, likely made by scavengers, let him slip through. He moved quickly, but cautiously, keeping low as he reached the mine's entrance. It was shut with thick metal reinforcements. Impossible to open from the outside, but there had to be another way in. Johann circled the site, searching. His heart leapt when he spotted a smaller ventilation shaft near the back, its grate rusted and partially detached. It was barely wide enough for him to squeeze through, but he forced himself inside, crawling through the tight, suffocating passageway. The further he went, the colder the air became. Then he heard it, a faint, rhythmic hum. Not machinery, not wind. Something unnatural, emerging from the shaft. He found himself in a side tunnel, dimly lit by flickering overhead lights. His breath hitched. He wasn't alone. Distant voices echoed ahead. He pressed himself against the wall, creeping forward until he reached a large open chamber. His blood ran cold. In the center of the room, beneath harsh industrial lighting, was the door. The door. Massive, ancient, and adorned with symbols no historian could decipher. And in front of it Luca's. Bound to a chair. Bruised, but alive, two men stood nearby, dressed in black, armed. And between them, the same cold-eyed man who had come to Johann's apartment. We need to move him now, one of the guards said. They won't wait much longer. Johann's heart pounded. He didn't understand what they meant, but he didn't have time to figure it out. He spotted a loose metal rod near his feet. No time for hesitation. In one swift movement, he grabbed it and lunged forward. The first guard barely had time to react before Johann struck him across the head, sending him crashing to the ground. The second guard reached for his weapon, but Johann was faster. He slammed the rod into the man's wrist, knocking the gun away. The man howled in pain, staggering back, but the third man, the one in charge, didn't move. Instead, he simply watched, unfazed. You really don't know what you're interfering with, he said, voice eerily calm. Johann ignored him. Rushing to Luca's, he ripped the gag off his friend's mouth, cutting the bindings with trembling hands. We have to go, Johann urged, but Luca's, still dazed, looked past him. Johann. His voice was hoarse. The door. Johann turned. The chamber was silent, but something had changed. The air felt heavier. The temperature had dropped. The symbols on the door, they were glowing. And then a deep, resonating click. The door shifted. A fracture appeared down its center, a thin sliver of darkness widening as dust rained from the ceiling. No, the man in black whispered. For the first time, Johann saw fear in his eyes. The door was opening. Something behind it was waking up. Run! Luca shouted. Johann grabbed his friend, and together, they sprinted toward the exit. As the chamber rumbled, the air itself seemed to vibrate, a low, guttural sound filling the cavern. Behind them, the last thing Johann saw before turning the corner, a glimpse beyond the door. A shape, a presence, something that should never have been found. Then, the tunnel collapsed. The mine was officially closed due to structural instability. No further investigations were allowed. No reports ever surfaced. Johann and Luca's never spoke of it again, but sometimes, in the dead of night, Johann would wake, Heart-hammering. Not from nightmares, but from the feeling that something underneath the earth was still moving, still waiting, and one day it might come looking for them. This is just one of many hidden truths they don't want us to know. If you want to hear more shocking and terrifying stories like this, subscribe to my channel. There's so much more beneath the surface than we've been told, and we're only just beginning to uncover it.